people.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to this notion of belief, it falls under what we call Gnosticism or being agnostic, right? We can work backwards if we allow each other, and I can tell you how that belief in of itself becomes inept, and then tell you why we have independent reasons to believe Islam is true, and now we can, 1 + 1, you can add them together and see why. So when it comes to being an agnostic commits you to not believing that this being must be maximally great, so that he has the omni properties of a theist being, all powerful, all knowing, having wisdom, can't lie, so on and so forth. With that being the case, you wouldn't be justified epistemically to say that this creator that created you would create you with a rational mind that would able to come to sound conclusions.
Yeah.
So that would commit you to saying that because that is a possibility in your worldview, that you aren't even justified to know basic truths or axiomatic beliefs or numbers, right? So even if, let's say, you give a sound argument against God existing or a sound argument against Islam, from your perspective, you wouldn't be justified in believing that's true because according to you, God could create you in such a way that the brain would only be wired to an extent that wouldn't come to rational conclusions and could make irrational conclusions as an agnostic, right? So that's why we say in Islam, because we believe that God is maximally great, that he has these omni properties, that it would be evil ascribed to him to not allow humanity to actually get to know him rationally through actual conclusions. So that's why we say we posit that Islam, or any theistic belief in general, but specifically Islam, gets away from that philosophical issue, right? What do you think about that so far?
It makes sense. Obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, please. In Islam, they believe that instead of worshipping the creation, you worship the creator.
Yes. Yes.
If I'm correct.
Yes.
Which totally makes sense. But my question for yourself is, what makes Islam stand out from all the other religions?
No worries.
Because if we realistically think about it, all religions, there's one God. Everyone says there's one God.
Yep.
But then there's multiple religions.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can think about different parts of the world where religions came about, so it would fit that time and ethnic or whatever. But obviously, one God, many religions. So how would Islam stand out from the rest?
I agree with you. A religion being just monotheistic doesn't mean that it must be automatically be true, right? There's a lot of religions that claim to be monotheistic, but obviously there needs to be discernment, because otherwise all these religions will be true and then obviously have a contradiction. So Islam stands out in two aspects. Islam doesn't only say that there is one God. Islam says that Allah, the one true God, he is the only one worthy of worship. Now, worship in Islam is more intricate than how we understand worship to be in other religions. So Christians, for example, they claim to be worshiping one God, but they worship other than the creator because they ascribe partners to God. For example, when Catholics, when they supplicate to Mary, they take her, although they don't profess worship, they take her to be an object of worship because they're directing something, and they believe that Mary is omnipresent. Because how can it be the case that many people around the world are all supplicating and Mary hears them at the same time? That can only be if she has an omni property of God. So although they don't profess it and they don't believe it, it is what is entailed from their belief that entails that they can't be truly monotheistic. Same thing when it comes to the Jews, when it comes to legislation, because according to them, they believe that other than God can legislate. We as Muslims, we say that's what God legislates, we can't add anything from it, and we can't remove anything from it. That's one aspect. Second aspect is the aspect of evidence. So when you say Islam is true, obviously, when I posit that to an atheist or to an agnostic or to a non-Muslim in general, you need evidence for that. There needs to be good evidence. So throughout Islamic history, there's been mainly two general paths that the philosophers and the scholars diverged to show that Islam is true. There's the first path, which is purely through reason alone. So that you begin at point one, square one, proving that God exists, proving that he must have omni properties, can't lie, then proving that he must send messengers, and then proving that these messengers must be human, and then proving the specific prophet of Muhammad, peace be upon him. That's the purely philosophical route. It's through 9 steps. Only issue is it has a lot of philosophical jargon, and it wasn't something that can be accepted by the lay people. You want to go speak to a lay person, you go through all these steps. By the 9th step, he's already confused, right? Then there's the second route, which is much more simpler, which is when you look at Muhammad and who he was as a person, what he spoke, so when it comes to prophecies about the future, or things that he knew during his time, that he didn't have the access or the means to know it, that gets you the whole way through. Because the only way that you could have known these things is by a supernatural way, by a being who's all-knowing that can actually give this information. The why I say that is because every other natural explanation fails. So when it comes to these discussions, what you naturally want to do is that you want to work on the induction, so probability, right? You're looking at this hypothesis, you're comparing it to all the other hypotheses. Your one seems to be the most justified, the most reasonable. Therefore, the other ones are discarded because they don't have any justification for them. So when it comes to Islam, there's many specific proofs that we can point at. An example of that would be, for example, the Messenger, where he says in an authentic tradition that a person or human being has 360 joints in the human body.
Right.
So he says that at a time when he had no means, so he didn't have the means to get to that conclusion, he still concluded something that's scientifically factual, right? So something that corresponds with reality that you could have known, and we see that there's no natural way to explain it away. So the only way to explain it away is that if it's something that's supernatural. That's just one specific example. I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense in itself. But as I said, I watch a lot of like YouTube and TikTok videos about the whole situation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like question debates on both sides. One of them that off the top of my head. Quite a few people, Christians, and a lot of people say that the Prophet Muhammad, what was it, a demon or a devil or something like that came to him and forced him to read or write something, and then he had a speech impediment, he couldn't speak, read or write, anything like that. So what's your response to that?
So this narration is found in the authentic traditions. It's in Bukhari, number 3. The narration doesn't mention anything about demon, doesn't mention anything about him attacking him or forcing him to do something, right? What we have is that Angel Gabriel descended, and when he descended in his actual form. So we have instances where Angel Gabriel would descend, and he would descend in the form of a man when he taught the companions the 6 articles of faith. But in the first instance when he descended, because we read that he came multiple times to the messenger, right? Not just one time. He came in his actual true form of an angel, right? So something that's supernatural or something that's metaphysical, right? So naturally speaking, when a supernatural being approaches someone for the first time, obviously it's going to be a reaction.
Absolutely.
Now, the issue is that this isn't something that's new to the Jewish or the Christian tradition. So when you look at the prophets and when they encounter angels, when you look at Daniel, when you look at Jacob, right? Their tradition says for Jacob that he literally wrestled an angel and he broke his hip. Now, are they not going to be consistent and say that, this means it must have been a demon? They're not going to say that. So obviously the Islamic tradition doesn't say anything about a demon. Doesn't say anything about that. Is that he came and he gave him this revelation. Also, what demon would come, deliver the message of the Quran, tell him to stay away from demons? And the first thing that we say in prayer, before we recite, is that we seek refuge from Satan. From the accursed Satan. So how could it be that we're seeking refuge from Satan, and at the same time they're saying that the entity that came to Muhammad is Satan? Obviously the claim doesn't hold up, and their own tradition refutes them. And you also have Daniel as well. Daniel in the book of Daniel, when he was approached, he was left with fear, and he was left pale-faced. That's what the Bible says. So they're not going to now say that it was a demon. It's just about them being inconsistent with the approach, right? Okay. So that would be the comment on that. Okay. But I really want to focus on this approach that I gave you about Islam, which is that if there is abundant evidence for this person, this illiterate man in the 7th century, who knew all these things about the future, made prophecies that came true, and there's no other natural way to explain it away, under induction, there's no other way to conclude except that he's a true prophet of God, right? So that is just through, so that already deals away with Gnosticism, deals away with atheism, and it gets you all the way to the end of Islam being true, right? I can give you another example. In the Quran, chapter 49, the Quran retells a polemic against Pharaoh and what they believed. It says, neither heaven nor earth wept over thee, right? So they believe that when Pharaoh dies, that the heavens and the earth weep over them metaphorically, right? The issue is that when the Quran made this claim, we didn't have the means in place to actually look back at what Pharaoh believed during his time to come to that conclusion. We only done so in 1799 when we discovered what is known as the Rosetta Stone. That contained the language that we were then able to use and decipher what they believed during that time. So he's making a claim about what they believed at a time when he didn't have the means to do it. So under naturalism, under a natural explanation, it can't be explained away. So it gives good reason or justification to that supernatural hypothesis, right? And therefore good reason to why Islam is being true. That's just another example, right?
Fair enough. One last thing as well. Again, correct me if I'm wrong.
Please,
I'm probably the wrong person to speak to.
No, this is a good conversation.
But I had a conversation with one of my colleagues who was Muslim. It was just a casual chat.
Yeah.
I believe, please again correct me if I'm wrong, there is something called Surah 929.
Chapter 9, verse number 29.
Which is, I'm sure everybody knows.
Yes.
It says something along the lines of, obviously,
Attack the disbelievers.
Attack all the non-disbelievers and so forth.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to my friends about this, that was in the Quran, he said it was written in the Quran in the times of
war,
when there was war back then.
Yes.
So if that's the case, a lot of Muslims say that the Quran is
timeless.
It's not corrupt. It's a perfect, message from God.
Yes.
But why would God say attack other religions and it being for that time period? Wouldn't you think that the Quran needs to be updated to now times?
Okay.
If not, would you look at that as the book is corrupted?
Amazing. Very good question. So this answer is going to be twofold.
Yeah.
Number one, understanding the historical context of that verse specifically.
Yeah, I know there's more to it.
Yeah. And number two, understanding what it means to have this verse today and why it's in the Quran today.
Yeah.
So, number one, this verse was revealed specifically when the Byzantines, when they broke the treaty with the Muslims, and because they broke the treaty with the Muslims, God allowed the Muslims to essentially attack back, right?
Yeah.
So if me and you have a treaty, that we're gonna keep peace, a treaty of peace, and you break that treaty, breaking the treaty is waging war, because the pact is of peace, right? So if you're going to wage war, obviously the civilians on the line, these people are going to be harmed. So what we're going to do is that the Muslims are obviously going to defend themselves. So that's the context of chapter 9, verse number 29. Now, on to the second part of the answer, why it's in the Quran today, is because the Quran, number one, is a historical book and a theological book. So it's a book that contains legislation. So because we know that God allowed the Muslims to attack the disbelievers in a point when they broke the pact, what we can do from that verse is that we extract legislation. The same way when the messenger commands something or forbids something at a specific time, that doesn't mean that it's only true of that time, it's true of all times. So that means whenever the Muslims have a pact with the non-Muslims and they break the pact, what do? We look back to chapter 9, verse number 29. God says that we can attack, therefore we can attack. So it's a way to derive jurisprudence, it's a way to derive law. Same thing with every other prescriptive or descriptive verse in the Quran. So that's how we understand chapter 9, verse number 29.
Well, in your opinion, do you think that the Quran needs to be updated to our times?
Okay.
Or would it just leave it as that? Because if a lot of people look through it and they see that Surah 929, because it's such a religious book from God, they will act upon it.
Okay.
But that, as you said, that was for that time.
I can give you an analogy.
The Muslims got attacked.
I understand.
So people can act upon it, but it's not for our times. I
understand what you're saying. So
does it need to be changed for our times?
No, I'll tell you why.
Or not at all?
I'll tell you why. Because someone misunderstanding a text doesn't mean that we need to now comply to that misunderstanding and make changes based upon understanding. For example, if I have a science book that teaches biology, for example, and you misread an instruction regarding an experiment, right? The instructions are correct, but you just tend to you misread them because you didn't read the context behind the instruction, and you come to the wrong result. Now, should the change be done to the instructions, or should the change be done to the understanding of the verse or the instruction? Obviously, we rectify how you understand it, and that way you come to the right conclusion. So I don't believe that somebody or people misunderstanding the Quran is an issue for Islam or issue for the Quran itself. Right? I don't believe it's justification to essentially comply to those misunderstandings and change the corpus, because the Quran says that God revealed it and is going to preserve it. So essentially what we're saying is that if we're going to change the Quran, is that we don't believe that this legislation is sound or valid, and therefore it needs to be changed to how we understand it. But we as Muslims, we say that God's decrees, God's laws are much more virtuous, much more wisdomous than how we may perceive them, right? So that's why we say that they wouldn't need to be changed. The change would simply be in how the person understands it. Now, some people may misunderstand it, which is why we say that in Islam, or Sunni Islam specifically, that we adhere to the Quran, which is the book, the Sunnah, which is the teachings of the Messenger, and the early predecessors. So the first 3 generations that come after the Messenger, because they would have been the closest to the source. They would know the historical context of how to apply these verses, and based upon that, we would know what this verse means instead of what it actually doesn't mean. That's how I understand it. Yeah.
One last question.
Go ahead.
How would you convince like a non-believer to come to Islam rather than Christianity, Hinduism, or Sikhi, or whatever?
Any other way of life.
Why Islam, not the other religions?
So again, that would also be twofold. Number one is because Islam is rational. It appeals to the sound mind. It's something that's intuitive, compared to the other religions where it's something that's not intuitive. So for example, Islam offers a preserved text. Islam offers a sound theology about who God is. Islam offers a way to salvation through the messengers. Christianity doesn't offer that. Christianity is already 2 down. So it doesn't have a preserved book, that's number one, and doesn't have a sound theology regarding who God is. They posit a triune God. Obviously it depends on which Christian you speak to, but they posit a triune God where God exists in a multi-personal fashion. But we view that as polytheism, because that's saying that God exists and God exists alongside partners, right? So, and the same thing with Hinduism. It obviously doesn't posit monotheism. So we say that monotheism as a way of life is the most rational and the most sound, because it doesn't attribute deficiency to God. God doesn't need anything, he doesn't need anyone. He can exist by himself. That's what the Quran says. The Quran says, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say that God is one. He doesn't beget, nor is he begotten, right? So number one, that is rational. But it being rational only gets you halfway the way there. Because it only gets you from that stage where, okay, now it can't be false, but that doesn't mean that it's true, right? Now, the second step would be through those rational evidence that I mentioned. How the author made prophecies about the future to come. For example, about chapter of Rome, about how the Muslims, how the Romans are going to defeat the Persians after they've been defeated. That's one prophecy as well. And through the other rational evidence of how he came to these conclusions of 360 joints. He couldn't have known that. How he made claims about the foreseeable past when he couldn't have had known these things. So all these things point that the only way that he could have gotten this information is from an all-knowing creator. So that gets to that jump of saying, okay, now I can be justified as being a Muslim, because that means I have good evidence to believe it, and I have good reason to believe that every other belief is what we say undercut. It has reasons why it's false.
Fair enough.
You understand? So I would advise you that you don't take it as face value. I would say that these videos are going to be probably posted on YouTube. I can give you the channel's name. Look back at the other clips. Look back at what I'm saying. Fact check it, because once you do that, then we'll give you the justification to become a Muslim. And I believe that you one day become a Muslim.
Definitely. I'll listen around and do a bit of research. But it's very interesting.
100%.
To obviously to dig around the roots. But it's very interesting.
Do you use TikTok by chance?
Say again?
Do you use the TikTok app or no?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to follow me, because I have my channel there in case.
What's it called?
The Muslim Apologetic. The Muslim Apologetic. So you can follow me there in case that you run into a question that you have a question about, or run into like a specific notion you ask me about. You can always DM me there. I'm always available on there. Yeah.
That one.
Yes. So because it doesn't show the user straight away. There we go. That's the one.
How's that one?
Yes. I can I can follow you back now, so that way you can DM me straight away whenever you need to. Mr. Buckingham?
Yes.
Amazing. There we go. So again, I appreciate the conversation. It's always amazing to discuss with someone who doesn't believe in God in general, because it gets you to essentially put everything on the table, right?
It's not that I don't believe in God. I feel like there is obviously a higher power above us all.
Right.
But in my view, it's like we don't need all these religions just to be, just to believe in God, love God, follow God, or whatever God related. Because like again, I don't want to offend anyone.
No,
like,
please. Yeah.
All these religions is causing all the problems in the world. Not massively. There's other attributes causing to the world's problems, but I feel like religion has got a small part of it.
Yeah.
If we all just look at each other as brother, sister, whatever,
Yeah.
mum, dad, auntie, uncle, whatever, and become one, the world would be a much better place. As I said before, I believe God is within everybody here on earth and animals because God created the earth and everything in it. So
I want to comment on that.
My view.
I want to comment, which is amazing. It's amazing you brought that point.
Yeah.
So the response to that, or the way that we counter this specific objection, is that we say that we as humans are social creatures. We can all agree on that.
Yes.
We're social creatures. We interact with one another. Now, when it comes to humans having social creatures, because we interact with each other, there needs to be social order. Because if I come along, let's say someone walks along now and he's completely naked, that would be something that goes against the social construct on a democratic level, and therefore he will be someone that's erring. He's someone that's incorrect for that, and someone would correct him. Right now, what does that mean? Because in Islam, we don't make a distinction between state and religion. We don't believe that religion is simply just a way of life that's independent of yourself. Islam interacts on an individual level and on a societal level as well. So what we say is that the same way that you believe that there is democracy, that there can be a social construct that regulates how people are, Islam offers that too, but with a difference. The difference is that we don't believe that man-made laws are infallible, but we believe that what God commands is infallible, right? So when He commands something, for example, prohibition of alcohol, prohibition of usury, prohibition of fornication, these are things that we see that have an effect on a societal basis. Maybe it won't be individual. Someone can say that, I can simply have a drink of alcohol on a weekend. It's not going to affect me on an individual basis. What we say is that when we look at the stats, a lot of the crimes that happen in the West tend to be involved with alcohol, right? What that means is that Islam cuts the root of that issue. It says that no, we say alcohol is not going to be permissible. Same thing, for example, when you pick up a bad habit. You don't pick up a bad habit instantaneously. It's a gradual process by beginning with the small steps, and then it becomes an issue. So Islam says that no, we're going to cut that bad habit from the beginning. That way it's not going to lead to an issue that's going to affect society. So that's why we say that saying that religion or man can live independent of religion, that statement is very fallacious. Why? Because you're positing that everybody can have the social construct worldview and apply it in reality, but if people do that, we're not going to have agreement. So that's why we say, and also regarding the point of religion causing a lot of the problems. Now, this statement is a bit vague. It needs to be disambiguated. It needs to be clarified. Because if what you mean by religion causing problems is that we see a lot of conflict or a lot of disagreements, I agree with you that misrepresentation of a religion is one thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's
right?
a lot of it. Yeah.
So that's why these discussions are very important. Because the moment that we stop discussing religion is the moment where you begin to develop your own ideology about this religion, and that's where violence erupts. Absolutely. So this is why discourse is very important, and Islam promotes discourse. Islam says that we invite the non-believers, are cool towards Islam. So actually Islam offers the opposite, that there shouldn't be conflict between me and you, right? You reason and I reason will come to a conclusion, right? So I wouldn't say that this would be a reason to particularly underline or undermine religion as a whole. I would say that if you take it on an individual basis, right? On the other hand, atheism doesn't offer a better solution, because atheism posits that there can be subjective morality, that somebody can, let's say, do a specific act that you may deem immoral, but he doesn't, and he's justified in believing in it. So atheism poses a bigger problem. So because Islam posits objective morality, that there is this construct, this basis whereby we all operate under, that there's not going to be this cascade that's going to lead into societal issues. That's what we posit in Islam.
Okay, fair enough. Why do you think there's a lot of conflict between Christianity and Islam? Because, if we look at Christianity and Islam, it's, in a sense, you could say it's sort of like, how to say it, my thing is better. It's a bit like me and you, for example. I would say my shoes are better than your shoes.
Right.
And then we have a debate. Your shoes were made by this company,
right.
but mine was made at this company.
Right.
And it's similar to that. It's sort of like with Christianity and Islam, it's sort of like, oh, my religion's better than yours.
Yeah.
Oh, but then mine's better than yours. My God is better than yours. But then again, it's the same, essentially the same God.
Okay,
And,
so there's a few things to
why
clarify.
Why is there like so much conflict between
Yeah.
the two
So
religions?
this goes back into beyond religion anyway.
Yeah.
Because what we say is that with any exclusivist belief,
Yeah.
there's always going to be a dialogue within it or about it. So for example, if you believe an exclusive belief about one thing and I have an exclusive belief about this other thing, there's always going to be tension. Because although you're not professing it, you're saying that I'm wrong. Although maybe you're not vocalizing it, right? So what that means is, specifically with the case of Islam and Christianity, Islam makes claims about the historical Jesus that Christians obviously find to be incorrect.
Yeah.
Same thing with Christianity. Christianity makes claims about who Jesus was that we find incorrect, right? Now, conflict in of itself isn't, or debates in of itself aren't inherently bad, right? It's only bad when they lead to, I don't listen to you, you don't listen to me, we don't actually get to present our evidence, we don't actually get to show people the truth, right? That's where we get to a bad conclusion, right? And then the last point you made, what was the last point you just made before I spoke?
The point was that, you know, is essentially is one God.
Right, yeah.
And it's just it's literally, as I said, it's just like, oh, my religion's better than yours. You should, you know, like convert to this religion and whatnot. But
so I wouldn't
as I
say
said in the beginning when we first spoke, is every religion believes in one God. So why is there multiple religions?
I understand.
That's the thing.
Because the conception of who that God is important. Because the Christians profess one God, but the way that they interpret that one God is different from the way that the Muslims interpret that God. For example, they say that this one God is multi-personal, that He's Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and that's how He is. We Muslims, we also believe in one God, but the way that we understand how God exists, how His attributes are, is different. We believe that He is absolutely one. He doesn't have partners, right? He has attributes, He has real actual attributes, right? For example, they believe that in Christianity, that God requires blood to sacrifice. He requires innocent blood to sacrifice.
Right.
We as Muslims, we reject that notion. We say that God is all-powerful. He can forgive without needing sacrifice, right?
Okay.
So, obviously, the general theme of one God, it does exist, but the specifications are very important. Because I can't succumb to a belief where God has partners. That for me means deficiency, right? But what's important is that you as an Agnostic, you examine the evidence. You see the weight that each religion offers, right? Why is Christianity true? What is the best evidence of Christianity? You weight it. Can it be explained otherwise? Same for Islam. What are the reasons why it's true? The reasons what I gave you, right? Can it be explained in any other way, right? If it can't, then it gives you justification for that belief, right? But that's why we see we have these divisions, right? For example, I can say that you're human, I'm human. Well, under that bound of humanity, we also obviously have differences in belief. Understand? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's it, all I can think of.
Sounds good.
But yeah, thank you so
Sounds
much.
good. What's your name?
David.
David, my name is Amin. Nice conversation. I appreciate
you
it.
too.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Alhamdulillah, very good discussion. And obviously he's someone who's an agnostic. He doesn't have a specific belief. But it was a very good conversation, alhamdulillah. May Allah guide him. You know, he had the evidence for Islam. Hopefully he takes it into account, takes it seriously, develops his belief, and comes to a better conclusion. And wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.